It is always a pleasure and a privilege and the best start to my morning. All of our mornings is the best start to every Ekadashi to be able to spend it with all of the devotees. Of course, we'll begin with our Mangala Charana. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So wonderfully, we are somehow or other together on the most auspicious day of Mokshada Ekadashi. This Ekadashi, which is the giver of liberation. Now, as devotees, we can also often feel like we shun liberation. We just want pure devotional service, which is true. But also, maybe don't shun the liberation. Maybe whatever Krishna wants to give us is fine. Maybe if Krishna wants to help us out from these material situations that we're in, we can let him. So I think sometimes we get caught up in so many stringent boxes of bhakti is going to look like this, and bhakti is going to look like this, bhakti is going to look like that, and nothing else. But I want to open myself up for what Krishna wants to give me. This lecture is centered around a famous quote from Srila Prabhupada, given in a lecture on the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And hopefully many of us have heard this quote before, but even if we haven't, we'll hear it again. This quote is, Krishna is ready to talk with you. He has come. He has descended in his Archa Murti to talk with you, to be visible by you. Now you make yourself ready and fit to talk with, and then he will exchange conversation. This is possible. This is a qualification. So this lecture is lovingly centered around Krishna is ready to speak with us. I know I can speak for myself, but I hope many of us have wanted to speak with Krishna. Sometimes we have those days where we want to speak to a supervisor. We need to speak to a manager. We need to speak to someone in charge of this entire situation because nothing is going right. We want to speak with Krishna. And then similarly, we want to hear some answers from Krishna. What will Krishna say back to us? How will Krishna respond? Is Krishna even listening? Is Krishna even around? Does he care about what we're going through? So we want to speak with Krishna. Here Srila Prabhupada is telling us that not only is it possible, but it's very, very probable. And in the course of us wanting to speak to Krishna and expressing that sincere desire of wanting to speak with our Supreme Person, we have Sri Bhagavad Gita. And of course, because today is also Gita Jayanti, what would this lecture be without an exploration of Krishna's speaking with us through Bhagavad Gita? Because this is a Srimad Bhagavatam gathering, I thought we would begin with a journey through Srimad Bhagavatam. Something that would give us all solace in the heart. So, because we are beginning with Srimad Bhagavatam, we will take a little bit of a journey through Canto 1, Chapter 15. We have all of our sages assembled. Sutta Goswami is speaking. Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna. Over and above all Maharaj Yudhishthir's speculative inquiries. So Maharaj Yudhishthir had previously been asking. He was seeing some really, really uncomfortable omens. Something signaling that something really unfortunate was occurring. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. With great difficulty he checked the tears of grief that smeared his eyes. He was very distressed because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. Remembering Lord Krishna and his well wishes, benefactions, intimate familial relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna, overwhelmed and breathing very heavily, began to speak. Arjuna said, "O King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. I have just lost him whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. Only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princes assembled at the palace of King Drupad for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow, I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi." Amazing that Arjuna is now recalling nearly every incident of his life. Even though we may think within the Mahabharata, Krishna was not physically present at all of these things, Arjuna was very keenly aware that it was because of Krishna's well wishes, because of Krishna's favor, that he was able to achieve anything good in his life. Because he was near me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful King of Heaven, Indradev, along with his demigod associates, and thus enable the fire god to devastate the Kandava forest. And only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Kandava forest, and thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of Rajasuya Yajna and paid you tributes. Your respectable younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandh, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandh's Mahabhairav Yajna, but they were thus released. Later, they paid tribute to your majesty. It was he only who loosened the hair of all the wives of the miscreants who dared open the cluster of your queen's hair, which had been nicely dressed and sanctified for the great Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. At that time, she fell down at the feet of Lord Krishna, with tears in her eyes. During our exile, Durvasa Muni, who eats with his 10,000 disciples, intrigued with our enemies to put us in dangerous trouble. At that time, he, Lord Krishna, simply by accepting the remnants of food, saved us. By his accepting food, thus, the assembly of Munis, while bathing in the river, felt sumptuously fed, and all the three worlds were also satisfied. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of Lord Shiva and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me. And in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body and was allowed a half-elevated seat. When I stayed for some days as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly kingdoms, including King Indradev, all of the heavenly demigods, including King Indradev, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with the Gandiva bow, to kill the demon named Nivata Kavacha. O king, descendant of Ajamid, at the present moment I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it. And only by his grace was I able to regain the cows, and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who in the battlefield withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shalya, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate, but he, Lord Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Bhurishrava, Susharma, Shalya, Jayadratha, and Balika all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Nrsimha, was unaffected by the weapons of the demons used against him. It was by his mercy only that my enemies neglected to kill me when I descended from my chariot to get water for my thirsty horses. And it was due to my lack of esteem for my lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver, for he is worshipped and offered services by the best of men to attain salvation. O king, his jokings and frank talks were pleasing and beautifully decorated with smiles. His addresses unto me is, O son of Pritha, O friend, O son of the Kuru dynasty, and all such heartiness are now remembered by me, and thus I am overwhelmed. Generally, both of us used to live together and sleep, sit, and loiter together. And at the time of advertising oneself for acts of chivalry, sometimes, if there were any irregularity, I used to reproach him by saying, "My friend, you are very truthful." Even in those hours when his value was minimized, he, being the Supreme Soul, used to tolerate all those utterings of mine, excusing me exactly as a true friend excuses his true friend, or a father excuses his son. O Emperor, now I am separated from my friend and dearmost well-wisher, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore my heart appears to be void of everything. In his absence, I have been defeated by a number of infidel cowherd men, while I was guarding the bodies of all the wives of Krishna. I have the very same Gandiva bow, the same arrows, the same chariot drawn by the same horses, and I use them as the same Arjuna, to whom all the kings offered their due respects. But in the absence of Lord Krishna, all of them, at a moment's notice, have become null and void. It is exactly like offering clarified butter on ashes, accumulating money with a magic wand, or sowing seeds on a barren land. O king, since you have asked me about our friends and relatives in the city of Dwarka, I will inform you that all of them were cursed by the Brahmanas, and as a result they all became intoxicated with wine made of putrefied rice, and fought amongst themselves with sticks, not even recognizing one another. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other times they protect one another. O king, as in the ocean the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the supreme personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger Yadu to kill the weaker, and the bigger Yadu to kill the smaller. Now, I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and place. Once more, now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Herein, Arjuna refers to the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which was imparted to him by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. The Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord Himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Vedanta Sutras. It is put within the study of the great historical epic Mahabharata, which was especially prepared for the less intelligent class, namely the women, the laborers, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and higher sections of the Vaishyas. I have decided to reclaim this statement. So many times we can think less intelligent, and then we get offended. But Mahabharata was made for me. You mean that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all Vedic wisdom, for me? How could this ever be an insult? This is the greatest compliment. Krishna spoke it for me, for all of us. We are eager to speak with Krishna and to hear his replies, and now we have 18 chapters of a Bhagavad Gita with which to relish the voice of Sri Krishna for us. For all of us who cannot understand the imparts of the Vedas, Vedanta Sutras, Upanishads, Puranas, Itihasas. Maybe we can't understand all of that. Krishna says that is more than all right. It's perfect. Because Krishna will make a way to meet us where we're at. Whether more intelligent or less intelligent, whether we can start a fire by mantra, or whether we can't even get our lighters to work, Krishna will meet us where we're at. No problem. Krishna will find a way to somehow ensnare our minds and our hearts. This Bhagavad Gita is especially for me. So when I hear these phrases, that it is for the less intelligent, for the women, for the Shudras, for the degraded family members of Brahmanas, no matter. That just goes to show how compassionate, how willing, how eager Krishna is to speak with us. We sometimes think, I'm yearning for Krishna, but does Krishna care about me at all? Yes. He will go out of his way to speak with us, to excuse us, to give us all leeway. This is the import of this sentence. Not that we should take it in a way that we lament. We should rejoice. Because I cannot understand all of these things, Krishna has made it simple. Just become a friend. Maybe we can't remember all of the eightfold paths of yoga. Just remember our friend. Could it be that it's that simple? Could it possibly be that this is it? My mind likes to complicate things. It can't possibly be that simple. And then Krishna comes back again and again with assurances and promises. It is that simple. If we just give our hearts to Krishna, it is that simple. Prahlad Maharaj has often stated, Srila Prabhupada has often stated, I do not understand why everyone does not simply give their hearts to Krishna. Why not? It can be that simple. With all of our faults, with all of our hang-ups, with all of our missteps and misgivings, if we simply give our hearts to Krishna, even decorated as they are, with all of these bruises and batterings and dents from lifetimes of conditioning, if we simply gather up that heart and give it to Krishna, that's all he wants. That is all our Supreme Person desires? This heart? I don't often think of it as pretty. It's covered, it's got dust. I can't even see it clearly most of the time. But Krishna, as Arjuna's heart was described as lotus-like, Krishna sees every single heart in that same way. Within the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes that at the time when Hiranyakashipu was wonderfully liberated by Lord Nrsimha, Lord Nrsimha took out, it is described, the lotus-like heart of Hiranyakashipu. If a demon like Hiranyakashipu's heart can be described as lotus-like by the Lord, our hearts have some hope. We have hope. Because no matter what we think we are, I guarantee you none of us think we're as bad as Hiranyakashipu. Right? None of us can even be as famously evil as Hiranyakashipu. We may have done some things in our lives, but it's not like Hiranyakashipu. My Guru Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, likes to say, Hiranyakashipu would strike fear into all of the universes simply by the raising of his eyebrow. He says, you raise your eyebrow, nobody cares. Who cares? I've raised it. I've raised the other one. No one cares. Hiranyakashipu would raise his eyebrow in displeasure. Everyone trembles. So we're not that great. And if a great demon like that can have a lotus-like heart, then what to speak of us? Us simple, less intelligent folk. This is our qualification. We have a heart. And no matter what we think, Krishna sees the best in us. Krishna is rooting for the best in us. No matter what we think, oh Krishna, I'm unqualified. And I have so many disqualifications. And then again and again and again, Krishna says, just dedicate your mind. Dedicate your prayers. Dedicate your speech. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever austerities you perform, just do that as an offering to me. Krishna is consistently, constantly seeing the best in us. Maybe we can't do it for forever. But maybe just for this one day, let us see what Krishna sees. Let us see the best in ourselves and give whatever we are to Krishna. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that the Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times, not only for solace from all kinds of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglements which may embarrass one in some critical hour. The merciful Lord left behind the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita so that one can take the instructions of the Lord even when he is not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned souls in a suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita, or any authentic, scriptural, sound representation of the Lord, is also the incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between the sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. One can derive the same benefit from the Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the presence, the personal presence of the Lord. The faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of material existence can very easily take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita. And with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. In the Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to 1, the Supreme Lord, 2, the living being, 3, nature, 4, time and space, and 5, the process of activity. Out of these, the Supreme Lord and the living entity, living being, are qualitatively 1. The difference between the two has been analyzed as the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert matter, displaying the interaction of 3 different modes, and eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of the material nature. Activities of the living being are different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living being within and without material nature. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later the subject matters are elaborated in the Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. out of the 5 subjects, the Lord, Supreme Lord, the living entity, nature, and time and space are eternal. Karma is not. But the living entity, nature, and time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any other control. The Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. The material activity of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transferal into this spiritual quality. Thus it can cease its material qualitative reactions. Both the Lord and the living entity are cognizant, and both have the sense of identification, of being conscious as a living force. But the living being, under the condition of material nature called Mahatattva, misidentifies himself as being different from the Lord. The whole scheme of Vedic wisdom is targeted to the aim of eradicating such a misconception and thus liberating the living being from the illusion of material identification. When such an illusion is eradicated by knowledge and renunciation, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real, but such a sense in the living being is a sort of wishful desire only. Right? Once again, the sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real. Right? We can enjoy with the Supreme Lord, and that is real. But such a sense in the living being is like wishful thinking. How can we really understand this? We have no concept of it, even though that was our reality factually. We have such spiritual amnesia that we've forgotten. And we can't even come into a concept where this is real anymore. How can I enjoy with the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What makes me think that I am worthy, ready, qualified? We may not be. But that doesn't stop the fact that it is real. And that it belonged to us once upon a time. And that we can get back to that reality with just a little faith and our determination. This difference in consciousness is the distinction of the 2 identities, namely the Lord and the living being. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living being. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. The whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita stands on this principle. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord and the living beings are both described as Sanatan, or eternal, and the Lord's abode, far beyond the material sky, is also described as Sanatan. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living being to approach the Lord's abode, where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited, is called Sanatan Dharma. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called, in different stages, fruitive activity, empiric philosophy, and devotional service, up to transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all the above items in relation with the Lord. Prescribed duties of the human being, as directed in the Vedas, can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of devotional service to the Lord. As long as one is engaged in researching the solution of the problems of life, his knowledge is called Gyan, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in the devotional service of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita begins with the problems of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter, and proves by all reason and argument that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of matter, the body, and the mind change for another term of material existence, which is full of miseries. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different types of miseries, and Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge which had been imparted to him during the Kurukshetra battle. Now, that all sounds very well and good, and sometimes these purports have such incredible philosophy. They're lengthy, and I am not ashamed to admit that sometimes a less intelligent embodied woman like myself can get a little bit, what did we just say? What did we just read? Srila Prabhupada, what conclusions did you just come to? The good thing is, whenever I find myself becoming mind-boggled and baffled, I simply read. Why? Have you ever seen a play of the drama of Lord Nrsimhadev? And whoever is Prahlad Maharaj is 5 years old. We get a small child, hopefully. Like a grown man, sometimes it happens, right? But sometimes we get a small child, and they speak such lofty philosophy. They say, "Oh, my dear father, king of the demons, I have heard from my great teacher that hearing, chanting, remembering all of these activities of the Supreme Lord are the essence of all spiritual realization." And we think, this is the sweetest thing I've ever heard. It's just so cute to hear a 5-year-old speak these spiritual truths. Am I right? I liken that to myself. Reciting these philosophical truths, which I might not understand. But my hope is that by simply reciting them, the Supreme Lord will think, how cute. This is adorable. I know they don't understand it. But just to hear this endeavor somehow might be endearing to my Supreme Lord. It might be endearing to my spiritual preceptors. And so even if I'm simply repeating like a parrot, everyone feels endeared to hear the parrot speak some words. We teach parrots these words, and then we think, oh, come now, repeat what I've taught you. And the parrot repeats. Do we know if the parrot understands? It doesn't matter. We simply are engaged and our hearts are softened by listening to a parrot repeat. I hope that I can just be like that parrot, like a 5-year-old. I may not understand it, but this repetition, this recitation is everything. It can accomplish everything on its own. This is Krishna. Sri Upanishad says Krishna can achieve the goals of any of his bodily activities with any bodily part, right? He can eat with his eyes. He can see with his ears. He can love through his holy name. So this recitation of Krishna's words can do everything. In this regard, of course, there is the famous story, and I'll end with this. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that there was an inwardly exalted Brahmin. I say inwardly exalted because outwardly, he did not look like a Brahmin at all. He was poor, in rags, destitute. And he was reading Bhagavad Gita every day. All of the other learned scholars were laughing at him. The Bhagavad Gita was upside down. And yet, this Brahmin was shedding tears profusely, like rivers flowing from his eyes. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inquired, "My dear Brahmin, what are you doing?" The Brahmin replied, "On the order of my spiritual master, I am simply reading this Bhagavad Gita every day. I don't know if I'm reciting it properly. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. But on the order of my spiritual master, I do what I can." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, "Well, if you don't know if you're doing it properly, and I can see that the literature is upside down, why are you crying?" The Brahmin replied, "I don't know if what I do is correct. But when I see this Bhagavad Gita, the truth is, I'm illiterate. I can't read. But from the pages of this Bhagavad Gita, all I remember is Sri Krishna, the friend of Arjuna, who willingly took up the reins of his chariot, who willingly accepted the directions of Arjuna. Do you know what a charioteer has to do in order to direct the chariot driver? They kick the chariot driver with their feet. Right for right, left for left. Who tolerated the kicking of Arjuna? This is Krishna? And so the Brahmin said, "As I remember Krishna, who is the friend of the living entity, I cry and cry." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to shed tears. He embraced this untouchable, destitute Brahmin and said, "You have understood the full essence of Bhagavad Gita. This is all we need. Maybe we can't recite it properly. Maybe our Sanskrit is not perfect. Our pronunciation is off. Our understanding is limited. But this repetition, this recitation, can do anything. It is like magic. And thus Arjuna himself says, I now take shelter of those talks that my dear friend gave me. For they are able to relieve the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. If we don't have faith that Bhagavad Gita can work for us in our lives, then that is our misfortune. On the authority of Srila Prabhupada, on the authority of our spiritual masters, on the authority of Arjuna himself, we have the promise that it can relieve the burning heart throughout all time and space. Shri Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Shri Gita Jayanti Maha Mahotsava ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much.
You recited, did you practice this class?
I did not.
It was so great. We all felt like a flock of parrots trying to internalize, eager to repeat all the wonderful points that you made. Thank you so much. Okay, it's question time. Takeaways, reflections, questions. Unmute yourself.
Oh, there's one question. The background music was really just off of YouTube. It's a YouTube video.
Okay, Adipusha Prabhu, Jeffrey Prabhu, Andrea, it's your turn.
Yeah. Hey Krishna, can you hear me okay? You can hear? Hello?
Hello, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, just a testimony. Wonderful. I mean, extraordinary. Extraordinary class. Amazing. So wonderful. You were talking about how Arjuna was remembering what Krishna told him, and that was relieving the burning heart. And how can it be that simple? That was so profound the way you said that. Can it be that simple? And oh, here comes Michelle. It's too late. Too late for comment. Sorry. All right.
Jai.
No, thank you. Oh, what's it up?
Okay. Clench up a little.
Okay, no, I don't want it. Thanks.
We did it. We did it. I had faith the whole time. Jai.
Substance.
I know they're increasing the longing, the yearning. Krishna's checking. Do you really want it? do we really want it? Jai. Ah. Fun fact, Shishi Radha Murlidhar are wearing a dress made by my mom. Ah. I know everyone on YouTube can't see it, but
All right, so let's have little takeaways. Who'd like to reflect? Which Bhakti, Andrea Draupadi, Paul Devi, Sama, Vikeshwari.
Achyuta Gopi Prabhu, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for always addressing the elephants in the room when there's statements in the Shastra that can potentially rub some of us the wrong way. You're always so great about kind of reflecting it back in a loving and compassionate way and letting us see it through the eyes of our dearmost friend Krishna and kind of understanding it with that love in our hearts. So thank you so much for that, because that's so important and such a beautiful reminder. Hare Krishna.
What was it, Andrea Draupadi? What was that? What statement?
I think it was the thing at the end with the Shruti Pala about like this can be understood even by like the least intelligent, and then it listed like all the.
that was true. Bhagavad Gita is especially for me. I cannot light any fires by mantra. I have no idea what Brahminical qualities my Guru Maharaj saw in me. But somehow or other, he said, here, take all of this. No problem.
There's no question he's empowering you. It's fantastic. We had this guest program. So last night we had 50 guests there, and each person who comes in, we allow them, welcome them, let them sit down in the dining room. And for the last 5 years over there, we go back into the office, into the back office, close the door, and then offer a little prayer to Srila Prabhupada. Please show us how to care for this person. This is Krishna's guest. Not to change them, but to change us, so that we treat them properly. We think about them properly. We speak to them properly. But I always used to do it in the back office. But now the landlord is doing some renovation. So we lost access to the dining area in the office. So we're working one floor above there where, practically speaking, there's no place to go hide when you pray for the guests. But it's the most important thing, bringing them in, not to think that we're capable of doing it without Krishna's grace. So the first couple of days we started using that office, there's no place to go. So I started doing this for the last few days, probably the last 40 people we brought in, right in front of them. After we tell them this is the Wi-Fi access, there's no smoking, vegetarian, then I say to them, right in front of them, so we're going to make a prayer, and I fold my hands, bow my head, that the Lord will help us remember that we have a choice to give our life to the service of God. We say that right in front of them. And these are people from everywhere, Saudi Arabia, and California, and South America, and Spain, and Japan, and practically speaking, 40 people in a row so far. When I bow my head and fold my hands, most of them both bow their head and fold their hands. And then when I say, and let's remember that we have a choice to give our life to the service of God, then I look at them like give them a little punch in the arm. And every single one of them so far, 40 in a row, have smiled and said, wow, thank you so much. And, you said it's that simple. We can, any of us, can say, Lord, I make mistakes. I'm not, such a big deal, but I offer you myself as I am. And I'm amazing. I'm astounded at how innocent most people are. And when they hear that, everybody has the potential to be a devotee. When they hear that, they say, yes, thank you so much. It's shocking to me because, I just think, these are the karmis, or these are, but Krishna brought them there, and somehow or other they're responding favorably to that little prayer. Anyway, that's some testimony of our experience that Krishna gave us. All glories to Prabhupada.
Sure. I'm actually really glad that turned into a blessing in disguise. I think we should always pray for people in front of them. Sometimes we think we are bereft of all of the prayers. I had someone once tell me, I don't like to praise you in public because I don't want somebody to put some negativity on you. And I was thinking, but then what if the person, if they never feel that praise and reciprocation, when do we show it? And I really do feel like prayer is like a really, really big hug, especially when you don't know someone that well.
Yeah. If people just walked in the door from anywhere. I was thinking back the other day, the different places I've had employment, and so many times in my life I've had people say, I'm praying for you. And at that stage, I had no idea. I didn't have faith, I didn't have a spiritual practice, and I was like, what? But so many people have said that to me, I'm praying for you. I was thinking, they must think I'm so pathetic, and maybe I am, but still, it's very touching to me to think back to that, including my own mother said, I'm praying for you.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Okay, whatever that means, but here we are.
And just imagine, like, how amazing if you walked into a place, any place of worship, and they said, oh, we've been waiting for you. Please come. You are God's guest. Please, just come in. And they're so enthusiastic to receive you. Like, I'm joining right away. That's it. I don't care what else happens. I'm ready. I'm ready to join. No problem.
especially in New York, most people are in a bubble, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
They walk around, there's millions of people walking around, they don't look at each other, they don't say anything to each other. But when you're doing Sankirtan, when you're collecting donations, when you're distributing books, you talk to everyone, you know. So, a few summers ago, I was out on Long Island. My sister had a house out there, and she brought us to the beach. So we went to the beach, and there were all these people there. And I said, wow, you know, I've worked this beach on Sankirtan. I would come out here and go from one end of the beach to the other and talk to every single person on all the blankets, you know, one by one. Each one is on a little island, you know. And my sister said, oh, that's horrible. We just want to be here by ourselves, you know, and you want to talk to everybody. I said, well, we have something to share with them that's so valuable. Our spiritual master told us, tell everyone you meet. It's such an interesting perspective and a paradigm shift to, you know, say hello to everyone and offer them devotional service.
Thank you so much.
Or glory to Prabhupada.
Thank you, Adipusha, for beautiful bathroom revelations.
The acoustics were great.
yeah. Okay, Rich Bhakti, if you come across Stephen King's house, you should start praying for him. Okay, don't just walk by. Ring the doorbell and start praying for him.
I think he's in Florida. I'll offer 2 cents since you called me out. Just starting with today's opening premise. Krishna is ready to speak with us. And I think to something that Adi Purusha has been so wonderfully inspired to emphasize these last few days. He's been reflecting on all of this discussion. What is it that makes God all attractive? What is it that makes Bhagavan's opulence of beauty so prominent? And he phrased it the other day, so much as love God, but let us remember that God loves us. And it's this, we may think it should be more complicated than this, but it's as simple for us. It says, so mercifully simple for us. All we need to do is to cleanse the filthy mirror of our hearts and reflect that love. I was in the 10th canto the other day, reading of the Rasa dance, and there's a line in there that I just hadn't taken notice of before, and it's describing at the height of the Rasa dance. Krishna was like a child playing with his own reflections, and it just got me thinking on this topic of mirrors and reflections and our own dirt, and just recognizing, well, sure, what are our qualifications? Who knows? But we are, like it or not, know it or not, whether you recognize it now or later. Sooner or later, you will remember that you are part and parcel of God and his eternal servant and his eternal friend. And there's no greater perfection than just reflecting that love. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Rich. Bhakti. Jamuna Jha, you had your hand raised. Or your wing.
Hare Krishna. Judy Govi, thank you so much for class. It was it was mesmerizing, really. I had two points that one was just when you said, when I don't understand, just keep reading. And I've always loved that. I feel something like Ganesham told me that years ago when he was doing the Bhagavad Gita class, and I was new, and he's just like, and I was like, particularly when it got to the 13th chapter, which bewildered me for quite some time, Now it's like one of my favorite chapters, actually. But I remember 13, 8 through 12, I'm like, oh, I love it. But I remember I'm like, I just said, keep reading. And so it's true. And so then he just had a question, and it may be impossible to answer for you because I feel like it's impossible to answer for me. But is there like the one verse that you, in those times, that you go and like, this is it? Let me hear my dearest friend talk to me. That you pick up the book and you look for that one specific verse. I know it's hard to answer, but I just wonder what might it be for you.
I think I might have two that I've kind of relied on my entire life. One, of course, is 15:15. Krishna is seated within everyone's heart, and from him come all remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas he is to be known indeed. He's the compiler Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. And then usually I'm begging Krishna to help me find something. I do use it for all lost things. Keys, wallets, phones, whatever. I use it before, I would use it before exams in college. I used to use that verse before everything. I use it before meetings. I use it before speaking to people. I use it when I'm nervous. If I have to go speak something. When I first started giving these lectures, I would say 15:15 before every single time I would do these lectures. And then the other one is to those who worship me with their hearts, I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. And that one is definitely my go-to because I'm always lacking. So I just think of myself as a little mundane backpack. I'm small and pocket-sized. Just gonna go and piggyback God and pray that He continues to carry me through. So I think those two, even though, we could spend our lives going through every verse of Bhagavad Gita and finding immeasurable sweetness, I think those two have really stuck with me.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
And what is it for you? What is it for you, Jamuna?
Yeah.
Oh, well, like I said, every morning I say 11:40, all obeisances to the front, from the side, from all sides. Oh, unbounded power, oh, master of unlimited might, you're all pervading, and thus you are everything.
Oh.
That's
so
like
good.
every morning. That's my verse. And then oftentimes, since I am in front of people all the time, I always think of I am the ability in man, because I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm not doing this and I can't do this. And so
I got nothing.
I got nothing. That's that. And then of course because it has the name of my Guru Dev in it, I'm very fond of the very last verse. The holder of the bow verse. I am quite fond of.
So sweet.
Yeah, so many. Thank you.
And Henry wrote, I preserve what they have and carry what they lack. For me, it's let us take this prashadam to our full satisfaction. That's my telling the truth.
Pursha Prabhu is very vulnerable to
I love it.
That verse got me.
Yeah. Ananda Manjayini, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Such a wonderful class. I wanted to bring 2 points and that really touched me and just add to them. So one was when you spoke what would happen if for every person who enters a temple we have this sentiment of you are the guest of the Lord. We've been waiting for you. Thank you so much for coming. And it reminds me of the recent lecture I heard by His Holiness Radhanath Swami, which was titled An Empty Husk. He was referring to the analogy of an empty husk of a rice. And how if we are not cultivating love and trust and the attitude of service among devotees, if we are not actually approaching each other as I'm your servant and I'm here to somehow bring you closer to Krishna, and if that is not in our movement, there will not be attraction from the outside, because it's like fighting within our own family. And so that's what I wanted to add to that point. And then I also thought when you spoke about Krishna just being all attractive, it reminded me of the pastime that I heard recently that I never heard before, of Krishna becoming angry at Radharani. And when he became angry at her as a lila, she didn't know how to pacify him, and she asked all of her gopis for help. They didn't know what to do, and eventually Jamuna Devi herself helped her in taking the form of the Lord when he was angry, and because she took the form of him to such a perfection, to like the most minute details, he became attracted to himself. And then she told him, well, I cannot be with you, I cannot stay with you if you are angry, so you first have to give up your man. And then as a blessing, Radharani said that she will forever hold a lotus flower that graces Jamuna's river in her left hand. And so, yeah, that's just that vision again. Like he's so attractive that he is attracted even to the illusion of himself. So these are my 2 points. Thank you so much.
So many of our spiritual masters have brought up this point that Krishna would see himself in a jeweled pillar, or in the reflection of even the like polished marble palaces, and he would think, who is this person, and why am I so intensely attracted to this person? This is the essence of why he is drawn to even bring out this manifestation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this manifestation of the most compassionate Lord, who is so attracted to even his own self that he just has to tell everybody else about it. And I think that is something that goes with the attraction of Krishna, that we become so attracted to Krishna and to Krishna's devotees that, like Adi Purusha Prabhu, we find we have to talk to everybody because it's just too good. Wouldn't you want everybody to taste the thing that you've eaten? Like it's like when you have something really good, you've got a great mango. Like, taste this mango. It's the best mango ever had in my life. And this is spirituality. So many teachers saying, there's fruit. There's such amazing fruit. You have to taste this fruit. And then, of course, we get caught up in, what tree did it come from? Because your tree's not as good as my tree. And meanwhile, our spiritual teachers are like, forget the tree, but the fruit is, just taste the fruit. And they're like, but which tree? Did it come from that tree? Because I don't even like that neighbor. And if that came from that neighbor's tree orchard, I can't accept that fruit. So many times we are differentiating between so many different trees instead of just giving ourselves to tasting the fruit, which is the all attractiveness of our Supreme Person.
Thank you, Ashita Guru. David, that's a beautiful point. Forget the tree, go for the fruit.
Go for the fruit.
Yeah. And I see Bhima Prabhu's reflection in the marbles of my screen. Bhima Prabhu, would you like to reflect like a parrot?
I like a parrot. I was just the whole class, and of course all the comments and the subject matter that everybody's speaking is Madhura, very sweet. So during the class, I was thinking she's speaking in such a sweet, dramatic way. This narration. Then I started thinking about sweet things, and then I was thinking about the honey, and then I have some cereal, and I went and got my honey, and I poured it all over my cereal, but too much came out, but I had to eat it because I offered it, and now I don't feel so good, so I don't have much to say except I've been slathered in honey inside and out. Hare Krishna.
But that hat, super snazzy. I'm really liking this.
Ma'am?
I like it.
Right. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to reflect? Okay, I see none. So this is it. Thank you very much. Ashita Gopi, great class, very practical, so many takeaways. I like your one-liners. Really, I'm a parrot. My memory span is very, very short. So one-liners work good for me. Thank you. And thanks, Rich, Chimuna Jaya, Bhima Prabhu. Baldevi, Yogeshwari, Pinkyoga Farlam, Suzanne, Benicia, Amish Prabhu, Arjuna Prabhu, Ananda Manjari for participating. Thanks everyone watching on YouTube, the humanity at large. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Ekadashi. Krishna will meet you right where you are. Forget the tree, go for the fruit. See Krishna's loving hand giving you the fruit. Go for it. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Bol.
Don't forget the honey.